Alright, Squadron, let's get started. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sure. Bow our heads a minute. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this rain that we're receiving. We really need it in this area, Lord, and be with each and every one in our squadron, Lord. Protect them, and as we go out and help our community, Lord, and we again ask for you to be with our service members and their families. Protect them and be with their families in comfort. And bless this time this evening. Amen.
Okay, we'll be seated. Before we switch to safety topic, I'll cover a few household issues, housekeeping issues. All right. Any updates on aircraft?
Yeah,
Everything is in order.
The third discrepancy that I couldn't remember is the standby altimeter light is not working or dim, and so we have not ordered a new one yet. I haven't heard any other complaints about that yet. I haven't flown it at when it's dark, so I don't know whether or not it's just not working or what, but that's the third discrepancy. The second was the rod ends, and so we're just waiting on the aileron rod ends for the next oil change or until it goes into maintenance before they do that. They have the parts in now. And then the update on the PFD display, I got an email quote back from Vista, and I said yes, go ahead, but I need to have an official estimate from them. So the exchange is I believe it's about $2,900, and plus they're gonna have to a couple hours of update the software on it. And I checked, we do have the software CD in the pilot operating handbook, so now it's a matter of waiting for this estimate to get into Gary's hand to approve it, which shouldn't take too long. We'll spin it around, and then however long it takes for him to order a PFD, then I'll fly the aircraft to Whiteman, wait around for them to update it, fix it, and then bring it back. So that's pretty much the status. It was flying good Monday when I flew it. That was yesterday, right? So
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, the aircraft will be out for the weekend for APL mission. It will depart on Thursday afternoon. But we will bring, weather permitting, 887 from Palm Springs to fly cadets and flying cadets, hopefully, again, weather permitting on Friday. And Terry has multiple sorties scheduled for Saturday and Sunday, depending on the weather. So hopefully things align to our favor, and we'll have it flying. So basically, if you plan any events for the weekend, don't plan for 743 Charlie Papa, plan for 887 Charlie Papa. 743 Charlie Papa, Major Green and Lieutenant Younger will be flying to IPL. All right. I would like to say a few thank you words to our members. First of all, I'd like to thank Major Pratt. He will help us to finance the squadron for the rest of the fiscal year based on actual state of our finances. So Terry, really appreciate what you do for us. We will, from my side, I will do my best to work with you and meet with airport manager at some point and discuss hopefully reduction of our dues. I would like also to thank Mike Swift and Chris Younger for helping prepare these facilities for the communications meeting which took place on Saturday. The facilities were in great condition. It was full house actually. There was not much, not a lot of empty seats in this event. Apparently, we didn't have communications meeting for a while, so people were eager to discuss topics related to that particular specialty. Roy, special thanks to you for helping me keeping the Facebook page up to date and making posts. So let's keep doing what we are doing. Our performance metrics on Facebook are improving dramatically. In fact, we have growth in followers. We have growth in actual impressions for our posts. So if anyone has any suggestions for content we can publish, please reach out to me or to Roy. All right. We planned a recruitment session at the airport on Sunday 19th. I supposed to attend. I supposed to man that session from 9 to 12. But I learned that I actually have a business travel scheduled for Sunday. So if anyone is willing to step in and replace me in this role, I would really appreciate it. So let me know if anyone is willing to come and man the table and answer questions people may have and so on and so forth. All right. Next week, March 21st, I will not be here. So, Chris, would you please handle the meeting in my absence?
Which day?
Next meeting.
Okay.
On Tuesday. I will be out Sunday through Wednesday, so there is no way I can make it here. And one notice regarding that meeting, Major Banner will be here attending, just observing. He doesn't have any specific topic to cover. That's part of his regular routine, visiting squadrons.
What time is the thing on Sunday?
Hmm?
Is it at the K-Roll Cafe?
Yes,
And
but
what-
you're probably not going to be here.
Well, I'm just making notes.
Unless the admission is cancelled.
I'm just making notes. What time?
It's 9 to 12. All right. One more update related to ongoing training. There will be a SAREX held by Group 2. That's far away. Watsonville Airport. It will take place April 1st and 2nd. If you need a sign off or you need a refreshing training for mission scanner, mission observer, anything mission pilot, you can find someone in the area who may be going. Check with the organizing party at Group 2 on aircraft participating in the event, and you may get basically fly in the back seat, in the right seat, going there and back. Of course, you'll need to find place to stay for 2-day event. If you need an email on SAREX in Watsonville, let me know. It was distributed wing-wide, so it should be in your COP email. Again, check that email at least once a week, because if you are looking for something to do for CEP, that's the place to look for opportunities.
Do you know if that's funded mission?
That's funded mission as far as I can tell. Because it's going to be pretty massive event. A lot of people signed up, so I think it's a great opportunity to work on. Our aircraft is unavailable. It will be at IPL. I was actually thinking taking the aircraft there if someone is willing to go with me, but it's not an option unless we pick another aircraft somewhere else. One more announcement related to ongoing training. So I ran a report on how many members have completed ICAT training, and we're at 100%. So I highly recommend everyone to go and sign up for it. There is actually a newer course available, so even if you took it a couple of years ago, it's worthwhile retaking the course and exam because it now covers newer equipment. If you have any questions on communication related issues, you can talk to Mike. You can also reach out to Josh Renzugla. I'm not sure I pronounced his last name correctly, but he is very easy to communicate with and he always wants to help. Last but not least, I will create a sign-up, rolling sign-up sheet for Squadron supplies. That includes paper towels, toilet paper, napkins, coffee cups, whatever, garbage bags, etc. We will basically let people pick whatever you are willing to pick on your way to Costco and on whatnot and bring it here, so we will have our Squadron properly stocked. I believe we ran out of paper towels as of now, and I actually forgot to bring it. I was going to. Anyway, next time I'm here, I'll bring something, and we will keep that inventory for supplies current at all times. So in case if there is any event happening in our absence, our facility is in working order. Any questions? Comments? All right, then I will let Michelle present her subject, which is hypoxia today. And do we have any other subjects for safety? Okay, so Bob, you'll take the next one, right? All right, so Michelle.
Do this presentation mode, that should bring it up.
It takes a bit of
Okay,
time.
perfect. Whew. And since I'm short, there we go. Can everyone see me and hear me? Yes. Okay. So, today's topic. Today's topic, of course, is going to be on hypoxia. It's kind of a spin-off from carbon monoxide from last month. And I would like to start off actually with a, there it is, with a case study, actually. If anyone has actually heard of this, please no spoilers. So hopefully this works. Can you hear it?
66, Roger, you're keying your mic and it's staying on there frequently, so please be careful. 66, declaring emergency.
Hear it?
Sir, he's declaring an emergency with his flight controls. Affirmative. Yes, sir, he said affirmative on that.
All right, Coletta 66, Roger, what are your intentions?
Request vectors Ypsilanti. Sir, he's looking for vectors.
All right, Class 66, understand an emergency. You want a vector to Cincinnati, is that correct?
Negative. Vectors Ypsilanti. Ypsilanti.
Class 66, are you able to maintain altitude? What assistance can I give you other than that vector?
Pardon? unable to control altitude, unable to control airspeed, unable to deliver. And that, everything A-OK. Okay, Cloud 66, understand you're not able to control the aircraft. Is that correct? That is correct. Cloud 66, are you able to land at an airport that is closer to your position? Pittsburgh, approximately 50 miles southwest of your position. Cleveland, about 80 miles northwest of your position. Prefer to land aircraft at destination airport as the aircraft is empty. No possible crew. So and the aircraft, if we are given the time to slowly re-engage. Coletta 66, if able, descend and maintain flight level 260. Descending now to flight level 260, Coletta 66. Coletta 66, are you still requesting a vector for Ypsilanti? Affirmative, you sure are. Got the aircraft back under control. Coletta 66, can I vector him to the right? I'm trying to hold on. We think he has hypoxia. All right, to the right is approved. All right, thank you. Him. Coletta 66, if able, fly heading of 330. 330. Coletta 66, area precipitation 11 o'clock and 15 miles, extends approximately 30 miles long route of flight. Okay, we see that. Looks like we're riding towards the big head. And Roger, 11,000, Coletta 66. Coletta 66, Roger, say intentions. And Coletta 66, destination, yep, landing. Coletta 66, Roger, cleared to Ypsilanti via direct, maintain 1000. Okay, so let's get around this window. This is direct Ypsilanti, Coletta 66. And this is Coletta 66, the aircraft is stable at this time. Too late, Franklin, they already shipped. 66, Roger. Again, maintain 1000. You are clear direct Ypsilanti. Contact Cleveland Center 120.77. 2077 direct, yep. Coletta 66.
But that you have to wait. So basically, this audio picks up as the pilot is flying at flight level 320 and has just been handed off to Cleveland Control Center. The aircraft has had a pressurization system malfunction of some sort. You can hear the alarm in the background, but the ATC controller thought it was a stuck mic. The pilot manages to state that he's declaring an emergency, but he never actually states what the emergency is, as you can hear. The second pilot, who was trying to help, assumes the emergency was with the flight controls, and the ATC controller proceeds with that same assumption until one of the pilots' responses tip them off to the problem of hypoxia. Now, what alerted the controllers to the true problem? Well, before we can actually answer that, we need to talk about what is hypoxia. Hypoxia basically is a state of oxygen deficiency in the body, significant enough to cause functional impairment, in which the cells cannot obtain enough oxygen or cannot fully utilize the oxygen that is available. Now, hypoxia is actually divided into 4 different types: histotoxic, stagnant, hypemic, and hypoxic. Now, it kind of sounds a bit redundant, but they all affect the body differently. Like, for example, histotoxic occurs more at the cellular level, the inability of cells to use oxygen due to interference. And that interference is due to cells being poisoned, things like drugs, alcohol, and the like. Stagnant hypoxia, you can tell what it is just by the name. It's basically an insufficient blood flow to the tissue due to poor circulation. That can be caused by coronary artery disease, excessive G-force, or even cold temperatures. This picture was from the Naval Operations Medical Institute, and it shows how prolonged mission flights can cause blood to pool, and that pooling of the blood can cause blackouts due to the lack of blood flow to the brain. There's also hypemic hypoxia, which we actually touched on last month. This is the reduced ability of the blood to carry oxygen. Things like blood donation can cause this, anemia can cause this, as well as carbon monoxide can cause this. Hypoxic is basically this is the most common form of hypoxia encountered in aviation. And it occurs at the lung level, mostly in an unpressurized aircraft. Due to insufficient oxygen in the air, the lungs cannot effectively transfer oxygen from the ambient air to the blood to be carried to the rest of the body. Now, for the remainder of this presentation, we will be focused on hypoxic hypoxia, unless, of course, I state otherwise. Now, can this happen to you? Short answer, yes. Hypoxia can occur not just at altitude, but also at high elevation on the ground as well. And here's a short video of an example of atmospheric pressure at different elevations, and this was at Haleakala, Maui. Approximately 10,000 feet elevation near sea level, and you may recognize some of the participants here.
So, a couple days ago, I shared a picture of a water bottle. Because we drank it when we were way up here on the summit and kept it sealed as we went all the way back down to sea level. Well, this is that water bottle. It has not been opened once since we were last up here. This water bottle over here is one that was opened at sea level and not been touched since then. You may notice that this one is no longer wrinkly and crinkled. It's because the air pressure is equalized and it's now perfectly round again. This one, on the other hand, is actually bulging on the bottom because the air pressure inside of it is so tight. I can't even squeeze that. This one, it's squeezable like a normal bottle is. Thus ends today's science lesson. So this is part 3 of this impromptu science experiment. The bottle on the right is once again the same bottle, unopened, untouched, except for carrying it. The bottle on the left is the same bottle that had the bulging bottom, which is now normal. Now the interesting thing is we also finished off another bottle while we were up there. And what's curious is if you'll notice, this new bottle and the old bottle are folded in almost the exact same places. Weaknesses in the plastic that are being used. So when the air compresses at all sides equally, it collapses in its weak spots, which are the same.
There's your daily education while on vacation. Basically, that showed the effects of pressure at elevation. Now, make sure I get this right here. There it is. As altitude, now what's basically the impact of altitude on oxygen levels? As altitude or elevation increases, the barometric pressure lowers, which results in a decrease in the partial pressure of oxygen in the air, which is basically a reflection of how oxygen is able to move from the lungs to the blood. Now, even though the fraction of inspired oxygen remains at 21% at high altitude, the actual amount of oxygen that reaches the alveoli or the air sacs in the lungs is actually much less than at sea level, which is resulting in hypoxia. And hypoxia can trigger what's called pulmonary vasoconstriction and ultimately an increase in pulmonary artery pressure throughout the lungs. Now, how does one actually recognize signs and symptoms of hypoxia? This is not an exhaustive list, but it is very common. This is the most common initial and severe symptoms that can occur with hypoxia. Oh, thank you. I will be posting this on Teams so that everyone will know because we're passing out handouts. Now you'll notice on that list that there's hyperventilation or increased respiratory rate is a sign of hypoxia. So I wanted to differentiate between hyperventilation and hypoxia specifically because hypoxia should not be confused with hyperventilation, though the two have significant overlaps in signs and symptoms because the causes of each vary. Hypoxia can stimulate an increase in respiratory rates, and the differentiation is also confounded because hyperventilation and hypoxia can occur together, as you can see in the list. If it comes back, in the list of signs and symptoms, you can see increased respiratory rate can be a sign of hypoxia, but it also can be a symptom of hypoxia as well. The main thing is one must be keenly aware of these two entities, not only for flying safety reasons, but also because the corrective actions of each is different. Now, how long can you survive oxygen deprivation? Well, this slide basically shows that at 1 to 2 minutes, the brain damage may begin. At 5 minutes, death of brain cells and severe brain damage starts to occur. And between 10 plus minutes, death is likely. Now, CFR 91-211 does outline the FAA's regulations regarding oxygen use at various altitudes to prevent and mitigate hypoxia as seen in this slide. I'm not going to go over it too much because I'm sure you all have read these CFRs, but that's where you can find that information. Some corrective actions for hypoxia. Basically, if hypoxia is suspected in yourself or others, for example, your flight crew, your passengers, fellow ground crew in the mountains, you can follow some of these steps. Administer supplemental oxygen, basically put on your mask. Check your equipment for proper operation. Number 3 does sound like it should be common sense. Ensure the regulator is turned on. But surprisingly, I've seen it happen where you think something's turned on and it's not. So you want to check that your regulator is turned on. Check the flow indicator. This will tell you if something is actually coming through your mask. Ensure that all oxygen equipment is connected and secure. Monitor your breathing rate and depth, because intentionally slowing your breathing can prevent hyperventilation, as we were talking about. Use the flow indicator to help you to monitor your breathing. And if safe, descend to an altitude or elevation below 10,000 feet, where supplemental oxygen is no longer required. Basically, the key point, the main takeaway of this is no matter what the cause or type of hypoxia one experiences, the symptoms and effects on one's flying skills are basically the same. One factor that makes hypoxia dangerous is its insidious onset. But the key to realizing the danger is recognizing the symptoms. Wanted to go back to that case study. And these two air traffic controllers, Stephanie Belvins and Marvin J. McCombs, were awarded the Archie League Medal of Safety Award because, according to their statement, amid the chaos to translate the pilot's or the captain's words, fellow controller Stephanie Bevins turned on the receiver so that she can hear the pilot with her own headset. As she thinks through the pilot's symptoms in her head, she concludes that he must be hypoxic. She knows immediately that it must descend the aircraft. Following Belvin's initiative, McCombs begins to bring the aircraft to the lowest altitude possible in order to alleviate oxygen deprivation. The pilot's words, as you can hear, gradually becomes more understandable, and around 11,000 feet, he returns to normal, and he actually confirmed that he had indeed been suffering from hypoxia. The interesting thing about this particular case as well is that this case has not only been chosen as an Archie Award, but also as a classroom teaching aid at the Civil Aerospace Medical Institute in Oklahoma City. And if anyone wants to know what it feels like to have hypoxia, FAA Civil Aerospace Medical Institute offers a one-day course to familiarize U.S. civil aviation pilots and flight crew with the physiological and psychological stresses of flight. And that's something to really know, because everybody reacts differently to hypoxia. So if you know your own symptoms and signs, you can easily spot when it occurs. And the information can be found here, and I'll be posting this on Teams as well. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions? Yes.
Okay, they asked him to descend to 11,000 feet.
Mhm.
Did he?
Yes, he did. As you can hear, his voice did come back. You can hear the coherence in his voice. He was no longer slurring his speech, which is one of the signs of hypoxia. He acted very euphoric, where he said, "Oh, I lost control. I lost this, I lost that, but I'm A-okay." I've seen other videos, which I wanted to post, but I didn't want to take up too much time, where in a controlled environment, they take out the oxygen and they ask the pilot to do simple tasks, like putting a cube inside of, like putting cubes together like you would in preschool. And they couldn't do something that simple. The lack of awareness starts to decrease. Simple motor activity starts to decrease. So yes, descending at the level that they went to.
He couldn't control the airplane. How did he start down?
Surprisingly, when I was reading this case study, I believe he was a smoker. And somehow that kind of helped him, which smoking is not recommended because it also hinders. But because from someone else's information, he was a smoker, that helped him in some ways. I'm not exactly sure how. And surprisingly, he was able to slowly enunciate what he wanted to say and still able to control the plane. And it affected him, but he was able to control it enough to descend and listen to commands, which I must give this pilot really props. He did a very good job at that.
And did he ever think to put on supplemental oxygen?
It was a malfunction in his, from what I was reading, there was a malfunction in his oxygen supply.
He was in a Learjet 25 that had pressurization issues.
Right, but then they did the supplemental oxygen.
I don't think
It was-
that's.
yeah. He had a pressurization
System
system
malfunction.
malfunction.
Right,
Excellent.
but he had an emergency mask, right?
That's the interesting part. So
Mhm.
normally in a jet, you have supplemental, an oxygen bottle that's completely separate from the pressurization system.
Mhm.
So, but I've seen a few recent maintenance things on like Reddit and whatnot, where the emergency bottle was maintenance and not reconnected.
Mm.
So,
Anything up-
because it did
It did
sound like he was
on a mask.
Mhm.
So I was like, I was kind of confused, but definitely, if he had his mask on and there was no oxygen supply.
So maybe there's a malfunction in the actual supplemental oxygen.
Yeah.
That's my assumption,
but
but
I'm
I'm
not
not
exactly
Were
exactly
sure.
there two pilots?
One of them was passed out.
Oh,
Yes.
that's an indication.
taking a nap.
Yes.
One thing too, I did, just for everybody, if you had trouble hearing either of the two videos, I posted both the video links on the
Oh,
team's
thank you.
chat while the meeting was going on, so you can go listen to the audio of either of those two videos again
Yeah,
afterwards.
And I think also, Major Knight also signified some of our aircraft do have oxygen, and most of us, especially if you're gonna be flying missions or, higher missions, you should get a cannula to connect to the aircraft's oxygen supply. So, and I know it's usually mentioned in the mission scanner training. So if you don't have one and you plan on flying, they're not that expensive, you should carry one in your bag, so.
Another thing you can also carry,
And
and
it's
it's
very
very
easy.
easy.
Is small pulse oximeter. As you can see, it's very easy. It's not going to get in the way of your equipment, and simple to use. Put it on your finger, and it tells you exactly what your oxygen level is at that time if you feel any type of signs that something is going on. Like I said, the main thing is recognize your symptoms, recognize the signs, and hopefully you could be able to alleviate this. And right now, my oxygen saturation is 99%.
At what level you should be considerate of hypoxia based on oximeter?
Anything less than,
I think they said 90, between 92 to 95 percent. Anything that lower, you start to wonder what's going on. Your oxygen saturation should be 95 to 100% if you're breathing what we're breathing into, which is 21% oxygen. But if you're now in high elevation, that can cause some issues, because even though at sea level there is a lot of oxygen molecules, now at higher elevation, same oxygen molecules, it's just your body is not able to diffuse or breathe in appropriately. Because when I was at Maui in Haleakala, even though it was 21% oxygen I'm breathing, I was having trouble breathing. And I was finding myself tired, fatigued, couldn't even take a step. I'm starting to breathe even more faster just to get in oxygen, and I can feel the effects of high elevation.
And just for reference too, there's a difference between different people. I didn't feel anything at all the whole time we were up there, so, but I could see her, and another person we were watching was literally about to pass out, and an older woman was just, somebody had to grab her and hold her and sit her down on the stairs, because she just couldn't handle it whatsoever. So like you're saying, it affects everybody so differently.
Depends on your physiology.
that's the other thing.
Everybody.
Yes,
Everybody's different. Some people are gonna get it at 5,000.
exactly.
They're not gonna be able to see colors at 5,000 feet. That means you need to go down.
Because I've actually also read that smokers also feel that
Yeah,
actually at
7,000.
7,000.
So different physiology, illnesses, if you have any illnesses, diseases, whatever, it affects people differently.
Nighttime.
And that's another thing. They do recommend oxygen at nighttime flying when you're even flying at 5,000 feet. So,
Roy has a question.
oh, yes. How do I find that? Yeah. Let me see. Can someone get the question? Let me see if I can end this.
What's interesting to me
Military uses a high altitude chamber, so everybody goes into high altitude no matter what kind of an aircraft they're gonna fly, they go through this experience. Easiest way to tell what your oxygen level is just your fingernails and your fingers. So if you push on the nail and it doesn't a whole lot change color, from blue back to the pink, what have you, you're getting pretty low. The oxygen level itself remains constant from sea level to altitude. It's just the pressure that's the difference. And that's what we have to remind ourselves of. And the other thing that's kind of interesting in this thing, if he's declared an emergency, he had the sense to keep talking, but he didn't want to change his course. He wanted to remain at altitude initially. And if you're going to declare an emergency, you turn off the center line of your track that you're on, or airway that you're on, and start your immediate descent. Now, they still had an autopilot, so there was nothing wrong with the airplane itself. The autopilot was on in this thing. They stayed at altitude, and the longer they stayed at altitude, the worse the situation got.
And one thing to remember is it affects your thinking ability too, so that's why you do things, silly things like staying at altitude when you shouldn't.
This actual pilot was actually flying manually. Something was wrong with his autopilot from what I was reading. So he was, and I think that's what actually caused him to stay alert, was because he was
But even
trying to
if you
fight the
had,
plane.
even if you had a pressurization issue, you're gonna feel it. You know that the pressurization, you feel it. You become bloated, you begin to pass gas, pardon the expression, but that's what takes place. So we know that when we get to altitude, our body wants to expel a lot of information, and we start to swell up a little bit because we have pressure internally. These are some of the things that I learned in the Navy. And you have to be very cautious about what takes place. Now, I've been as high as 14 in an airplane without oxygen. Sometimes I fly at 12, 12.5 without oxygen. I do carry it with me. And every once in a while, I'll just take a quick whiff of the oxygen mask. And it kind of peps me up a little bit, and I'm good for about another 30 minutes, and that's it. But I don't know if these people ever went through high altitude training. And most corporations do send their pilots to a high altitude if they're gonna be flying as high as 42, 43,000 feet, which the Learjets are always up at. They get up pretty high.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, good.
TV was actually muted.
May I say a couple of words?
Sure, go ahead.
Great. Michelle, outstanding presentation again. You're setting an expectation. So really appreciate your work. A few things about flying in CAP and oxygen. If we're at a base or we remote launch and you're part of my crew and you don't have a cannula, you're going to stay on the ground. Okay? It's that simple. You need to have a cannula if you're going to fly, and hopefully the airplanes that we have an oxygen bottle and they're charged always. And I will tell you that if we actually start doing any of the search, et cetera, we're going to need the oxygen. The rule of thumb has been, I mean, you figure out what you need based on flying and the amount of time you spend at altitude and so on. But generally the rule of thumb is 10,000 feet in the daytime, 5,000 feet at night, and you're on oxygen. It's very important. The oximeter that Michelle was showing, that's like $13 from Amazon, and it's a very valuable tool. And by wearing it when you fly, you kind of get a feel for how you specifically react. Also, I put up some pictures in the chat of what is called a PROT, and it's something remote trainer. Now I've forgotten what it actually is. It's an FAA program. If it ever comes into your area and you see it pop up on an FAA seminar, grab it, because it is a rare thing for it to come to you, and it's a great opportunity to see how you specifically react to hypoxic situations without having to go to a chamber. Because the opportunity to go to a chamber, though we would get them from time to time, as you can see from the pictures of me, Pratt, and Robinson that I posted up there, That ship has sailed long ago, and it is virtually impossible for civilians and civilians like us to get in there and try the chamber. However, if you have the opportunity to do the chamber or the probe, either one of those will give you a very vivid example of what it is like to be hypoxic. In my particular case, I got stupid fast, stupider fast. I really became very confused. The first indication for me in the chamber was color went away, although I wasn't aware of it until I donned my mask and suddenly vivid color appeared. It was like one of those things, as it went away, you weren't totally aware of it until it came back in a rush. It was pretty remarkable. Anyway, I strongly recommend.
The questions?
I got one. If you lose pressurization, you should be able to see it on the cabin pressure gauge, right?
Well, if it's a pressurized aircraft, there is an indicator in the cabin, and Bob can probably attest to
It tells
that.
you what the interior cabin altitude is. It doesn't tell you what altitude you're on the outside. And then if it begins to rise normally above 85, 8,800 feet, then the alarm normally goes off.
Well, then you get the RO alarm.
It's pretty standard.
And in which conditions the supplemental oxygen masks drop out?
Yeah, there's an automatic release, and then there's a manual release on most Part 141, which is commercial airlines. And some canisters use oxygen bottles, and then some use a generator, which gets awful hot.
That's what causes things to burn up. And then remember I think a couple of them popped in the cargo hold? They were burying them somewhere?
They're Florida.
Yeah, so, but in the DC-10, they were in the back of the headrest in the seat in front of you. Along the sides, they were drop downs. And just remember, if you're ever in a commercial airplane and they drop the outside one, which stays hung up and the others drop down, that's the most oxygen output, because it's always for flight attendants. And for personnel, they help you on the outside, so just kind of think about it.
And I think I read somewhere also, the commercial operations, there are certain times where, especially if there's one pilot in the cockpit, which they try not to do, one of them always has to be on oxygen.
That's mandatory.
Yeah. But, so, we've had enough of all the pilots being sleeping.
Well, there was not so long ago, 9-10 years ago, there was an incident. The aircraft was flying uncontrolled. The military went to intercept it. They were flying next to it. The pilots didn't show any signs of
baseball player, I can't think of his name.
Yeah. There was a passenger, was a golfer.
He was in a private jet.
So the whole crew passed out, and the aircraft crashed.
Yeah, he ran out of fuel. Pains dirt.
Yeah, they traced it from Alabama clear to Missouri or something.
All right. Thank you very much, Michelle. It was a great presentation. We will think of something else, unless you come up with another idea. We can talk about aeromedical factors, like how medicine can impact our body and our performance. That could be one reason. Something else for the next safety meeting, I would recommend, as suggested by George, presenting the safety equipment we all should have on ourselves and in the cabin in case of an emergency. So that's a great experience, and we can actually share our personal safety gear we have. Any pilots actively flying, let's bring our equipment and see what George presents and what do we have and where we come short. All right. Bob, would you like to say anything?
Oh, mine's going to be quite lengthy, so I'll save it for another time. But what it is, it pertains to glide speeds and aircraft and drafts.
Okay.
We need to review that.
So then, next safety meeting, we'll go with your presentation, Bob, and Michelle has little more time to prepare for the next one. All right, if no other questions, I think we can close 9 minutes earlier.
Just some thoughts here. I had the opportunity to go up to my house and get sore shoveling snow. Those people up there are still snowed in. The berm line across the street from our house is over as high as this room is in here. I got 8 foot of snow sitting on my property. I can't even look out the windows. And I shoveled for about 4 hours, and all I got was 4 feet by 12 feet cleaned off the front porch. I called the guy today to clean off the porch, and then my porch, which needs to be replaced anyway, is under stress pretty well. So you think about the weight that's in there. We just spent $9,000 for 20 slips on the multiple slip that my father and my father-in-law first purchased. It was the first experimental dock at Lake Arrowhead because they didn't have enough single docks, so they made it a multiple dock. 2.5 days with people out there chipping ice to get it to refloat again. Now, luckily, our damage is minimal, and we have one finger that's appears to be quite loose, which means that the tie bolts have probably been pulled through the timbers. But when you see Lake Arrowhead frozen over, and I have never seen it frozen over, and I've been up there since 1950. I normally see it around the edges here and there, but the whole lake was frozen. As far as the 10 fires and the 2 people that got severely burned during the explosions, your gas meter has a plastic insert that's a reducer, and a pipe is screwed into it. But when the temperatures are 15 degrees at night and 20 during the day, it gets pretty brittle. And then you get a load of snow that's 4 feet off your roof, hits it with impact, it cracks, and then we had a leak. So we had the other house, the second house, which is my wife's house, was red tagged. And we couldn't figure out on a picture that was sent to us from the cameras at that house from my son-in-law why we had 5 people digging and shoveling snow. We couldn't figure out, and it looked like it was the driveway. No, it was the back of the house. They were trying to get to the meter because it was gas. So we ended up finally getting not only the water shut off as a precaution, but also the gas was shut off, and as of yesterday morning, they got it back on again for both systems. The other house is in pretty decent shape. We never did lose gas on it because my father built a box around that meter to protect it from the snow. The only thing I couldn't do is use the generator if we lost electricity because that shed was covered with snow. So I got 8 foot of snow on all around the house, basically, is where I am. 2 hours with my neighbor helping me just to cut steps to get to the door into the cellar to get back up to inside the house. And we had to dig down after we'd cut off the top 3 feet, another 4 feet just to get down to the walkway and move the plate just to open the door. So when you hear about these people up there, you don't know what they've done, and they've become self-sufficient in helping other individuals because the county and the state has done nothing, basically nothing. When the sheriff says you can't land the helicopter at the hospital with medication and food, when they got a heliport because it's too dangerous and it's a congested living area when nobody's basically around too much for the winter months. They do have about 16,000 people live up there, I guess, between Crestline and whatever. They decided to hell with this, we're going to land in the street. They landed in the street, and they brought trucks down, whatever they could do, and hand carried it and shipped it back up to the hospital. And since then, they've been landing in the highway. They said, and this last Monday, the sheriff said, not yesterday, but the previous Monday, oh, it's miscommunication. Well, I have news for you, Sheriff. You could have asked your own air department what was dangerous about putting a helicopter into the street or near the hospital just to deliver medications. But there have been 10 deaths. One was hit by a car while she was helping shovel out a neighbor's car out of the snowbank. They don't know what's happened to the other two. Some people are still inside, frozen, which is probably a good thing because deterioration of the body doesn't take place. But it's pretty sad, pretty sad. So.
Did CAP take part in the emergency?
Not me. You couldn't even get up there. We've had my daughter and 4 kids living with us for 3 weeks because they couldn't get back into Running Springs. They left Saturday morning for Running Springs, and they don't want anybody up there. The roads are clear, and I had to go clear up. 18 is closed because of rock slides, which is common for that section. I went up through Running Springs, and I didn't even take the shortcut. I went up into town and back down to Redlands or to Arrowhead, and like I said, I've got 8 and 12-foot berms on my street, and I'm on a secondary. They plow the highway. Our street's the next one to get plowed.
Yeah, another thing I'd add is I've been watching. I got a friend of mine who works with the San Bernardino sheriff. I've been watching some of the emergency response up there, and one of the things that did happen recently is they got the San Bernardino sheriff enlisted a bunch of outside help from wreckers and people with heavy machinery to go up there and help out because San Bernardino doesn't have the equipment. But what's interesting is the San Bernardino Fire Department attempting to work with a bunch of people that haven't had FEMA ICS training, which bringing it back to the CAP side of, I never really thought about it as I went through all the IS training that I've taken all the way up to the ICS 300. And when you start seeing these emergencies and hearing the firefighters talk to people that aren't trained, I know exactly what they're talking about. And so as you go through your CAP career, they're not the most fun courses, but you should really go through the ICS program because it will help you interface when it comes time. And if you are either part of your local community like CERT, or you're doing something for Civil Air Patrol, being able to kind of drop an insert into what's happening from an emergency standpoint when they say you're assigned to this strike force or this strike team and this equipment and blah, blah, you will understand exactly what they're saying and you can just go instead of, oh, what are they talking about? And then having to get a translation. So I found that very interesting watching the response going on up there. I mean, everybody, of course, is trying to do what they can. San Bernardino wasn't prepared for this. The people that came from the outside have zero training in all of this, and they're kind of got a on-the-job training on how to do the National Incident Management System and the incident command structure. They've had to do it as they were going through and helping the people up there. So
when the snow gets pretty deep, a grader doesn't work.
Yeah.
They had all the graders with chains on them, all the equipment with big buckets. We're talking about big Caterpillars with 9, 10-yard buckets on the front end. They were all donated except that they said, if you can drive them, we'll bring them, we'll get them there, but we got to have chains. We don't have chains because we work down here below. So it took San Bernardino another 3 days to get chains for all the equipment. Yesterday when I came home, there was a pink skip loader sitting up on the highway that they were using. So doggone well it was rental. But everybody's doing that. They have one snowcat on the hill. And that's what they used to get out some people that were in dire need of help. A number of people that need dialysis machinery, treatments, what have you. They use the snowcat, but it's limited work and go.
Yeah, the one I was watching was it's a record crew that does equipment rescue in Utah. So they were like outfitted for mountain deep snow, and it's just like watching what they had to do, and they're good at it. And San Bernardino just had none of that equipment. So these people.
Their emergency service.
Well, it's not their mountains. Just San Bernardino was not ready for mountains, super deep snow, and the fact that just like you said, you can't just use plows. You can't just use regular plows and graders. Like you have to use super heavy equipment, big giant snowcats that are able to push these snow.
And you got to pick it up and then dump it. Pick it up and dump it.
And then not berm in all the people, because I think originally that's what happened up there is before they pulled the plows out, the plows were keeping the streets clean, but then they're creating these berms that were trapping everybody in their driveway. So and I lived in Tahoe briefly, which I
That's
Doesn't-
3
doesn't
hours.
seem like I should,
See how much I got done.
but I lived in Tahoe, and you know, I grew up in snow, and I've been around snow, and until I hit mountain deep snow, that's
3 feet.
it's
That's
more
3 hours
terrifying
of
than
digging
anything.
from that thing over to my.
I mean, I used to have to drive up over the Donner Pass because my data center was in Sacramento, and then I lived in West Reno, and you know,
don't have much of a road.
going
That's
up
the
over, following you can't see, you're on a mountain road. Anyway.
Thank you for sharing. That's actually a good observation, Chris. Basically, a lot of FEMA courses are available online. 300 and 400, you'd have to sign up for those, and regularly there is an announcement via email again, right? So watch for those emails, and you have to fill out the form. All the previous FEMA courses are prerequisites. Then you have to give it to me for approval, and you'll scan it and send it to most likely George God. He's running the program.
I mean, you guys are the newest ones here. Just think there's 4 that you're going to do
online, and Michelle, you may have possibly you may have already have credit because you work in the medical profession. A lot of hospitals are part of the National Incident Command System, so you might want to check. But have you done any of the FEMA courses yet?
I've done the 100 and I'm working on the 700. So almost finished with 700.
So when you registered for your FEMA SID, did you already have credit?
No, I don't think so. I haven't looked into it really.
Okay. Because it depends on which hospital you're in, but some hospitals are part of the incident command system, so you would have gotten that training.
Well, considering it is a children's hospital, I don't know.
There's no trauma?
It is a trauma.
Someday I should say Sunday.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know the
I'll have to look into it.
But yeah, the 100, 200, 700, 800, those are all the kind of the ones you can do online. 300 is pretty much, if you're going to be doing any, like, in charge of a department or a base, so logistics, planning, operations, you'll need guys 300. 400 is for incident commanders. So, you know, it may take you a while before you need that, but I took 300 and it was weird. I mean, I didn't think I would need to do it for any reason. The scenario we got was flooding, which I thought was like, at the time we had a drought.